Why were they afraid? Because they didn't know what God was going to do. Prior to sin, they knew exactly how God was going to respond. There was no reason. There was no reason to fear God. They didn't worry about punishment. So he says, the one who fears is not made perfect or is not made mature in love. We love, why? Because he first loved us. So what happens is he lays out this idea 16 times. Wait a minute, I forgot about that. I keep going. We love because he first loved us, okay? Whoever claims to love God and hates a brother or sister is a liar. For whoever does not love their brother and sister, whom they have seen, cannot love God, whom they have not seen. How are you going to say you love a God that you can't see if you can't even love your brother or sister who you can see? That's the idea. And he has given us this command. Anyone who loves God must also love the brother and sister. So you want to know a mark of a New Testament Christian? We are known by our love. That was said of the disciples. They were amazed at how they loved one another, because love was a defining mark of brothers and of people in Christ. Okay, guys, what's going on? Is it? I'm going to say, okay, well, there we go, get me on a black screen. Awesome. All right. So, this is where we are. So, this is what you've got. You've got this foundation here that he lays it out. And here's what I want you to understand. He talks in 1 John 16 times, he talks about the idea of love. In the end of the book, here's what he's linking this idea. Two ideas of love and fear. And what he's saying is this. Those are two opposites. Okay? Now, the implications for that, for us, in 2020 are huge. You've heard me talk all along in this series about Satan's world, God's world. Satan's world is a world that steals. God's world is a world that's generous. Satan's world is a world where we lie, we bear false witness against people. God's world is a world in which we're people of truth. And he jumps back and forth between these constantly. In the same way, here's what we're after. Satan's world is a world of fear. God's world is a world of love. They're two opposites. When Jesus talks in the New Testament here about this idea of the Ten Commandments, what he bookends them both with this idea of love. When John comes to the end of his writing, he says, look, you need to understand, love is something that cannot exist in a world of fear. They're two opposites. So I want to talk about fear because that's where we are as a culture right now. We are living in a world in which we have lots of people who are scared and they are fearful, and we don't know what's the balance between faith and fear and what it is and what it isn't. So let me lay a little bit of groundwork, and we're going to talk about that. Because this love thing is the solution to it, okay? So let me give you a couple of things. Let's talk about understanding fear. Here you go. Fear is one of the most basic human emotions. It is programmed into the nervous system and works like an instinct. From the time we're infants, we're equipped with the survival instincts necessary to respond with fear when we sense danger or feel unsafe. Fear helps protect us. Here's what happens when you fear. First of all, you have a fight or a flight response. Your heart rate rises. You end up with tunnel vision. Your peripheral vision is reduced, so you don't take in everything on the outside. You focus on one thing. The cortisol stress hormone levels in your body rise. Your body limits several other functions in order to make sure it has as much energy as possible flowing to your muscles so that you're prepared to defend yourself from danger. The rational part of your brain disengages because it's overloaded with hormones. You instantly focus on danger or negatives. So what happens is, this is what you need to understand. God designed you and God designed me with that as an internal mechanism. So let's put it in a practical thing. I am walking to my mailbox and I am confronted with a lion. standing between me and my mailbox. Okay? Fight or flight comes into play. First of all, a lion should not be between me and my mailbox. It shouldn't be Iowa. So the fact that it's there has me of great concern. So what's going to happen? My heart rate's going to go up. I'm going to become focused on the lion. I'm not going to be going, oh, you know what, I think that garden needs to be weeded. No, I'm focused on the lion. My stress hormones are going to go up. My body is now going to put all of its energy into every muscle that I have, because if I decide to fight it, I'm going to need every muscle. If I decide to run, I'm going to need every muscle. The rational part of my brain disengages. I'm not going to sit there and have a mental debate on what is a lion doing in Iowa. None of that matters. It's going to be completely focused on that, and I am instantly going to focus on what's the best way to protect myself. God designed that for me. He designed us to be able to do that. So there are some things that we're naturally, instinctively going to fear. There are other things that we are taught to fear. A child does not know that a stove is hot. It just sees it as a big box. So you have to teach a child. You do not open the box and put your hand in. You do not touch stuff on top of this box. Why? Because it's hot. It will burn you. So we condition children to be able to learn there are certain things that you need to have a healthy respect for, a healthy fear of. So we have conditional things and we have instinctive things. That's the whole idea of fear. Okay? First of all, you got to understand it is a God-given thing. But here's what you have to figure out. Satan has learned that if he can get people to live in fear, they disengage. So if Satan can condition us to always be fearful, then guess what? According to 1 John, we're not going to be able to love. Why? Because we're afraid. Because you see, fear says, stay away. Love says, come close. Let me say it again. Fear says, fight or flight. Protect myself. Defend myself. On the other hand, love says, embrace. Love says, I'm going to come close. Love says, you see this in the ministry of Jesus. Society and the life of, see, there wasn't COVID when Jesus was here. Well, there may have been. We just didn't know what to call it back then. There wasn't, but there was leprosy, which was highly contagious and highly infectious and something that people stayed away from. There were trained things to fear. You feared prostitutes. You didn't want to go anywhere close to them. You didn't want to talk to them. You didn't want to have anything to do with them. You were taught to fear people who were sick because they were often demon-possessed, because they linked sickness to demons. So the culture of Jesus' day said, stay away from all of those people. Keep your distance. Jesus said, I love them, and I will engage them, and I'm okay with getting close to them, because love trumps fear. That makes sense? Okay, that makes sense? Because I'm going to try to put all this together for how we respond, and I want to make sure that what I'm saying comes across honestly without being misread in this. And we're on a really thin ice here between this faith-fear thing. So I want to play it out in a realistic idea for you. So let's just talk about it practically, just to kind of help us, in this thing. In this whole COVID thing right now, here's what we have. We have a group of people who are staying away, and some of them are doing it for different reasons. One of the reasons, for instance, is in order to protect themselves because their systems or their age, they're compromised. Okay? Here's the reality of it. COVID, no COVID, they'd be making the same decision. And that's a wise decision. That's what they should be. We have another group of people that, in their deal, they are literally living in fear because they're afraid, A, if they get it, B, they will die. And they haven't settled the death question in their life. So and if that's you, I understand why you would be afraid. I'd be afraid too if I didn't know what's going to happen beyond this world for me. Okay? That's a legitimate fear. You should fear death if you don't have Christ as your Savior, because it ain't pretty after this. There are other people who they're living in this state of fear, and that's driving everything that they do. And so what's happening because of that, they don't realize it, but all of those things that I talked about that happen physically to you, cortisol levels, everything going up, blood pressure, all that constant hormone thing going, that's why. And by the way, there's a natural thing that happens as we get older. As we get older, we fear more. I don't know if you're aware of that. Okay, I noticed that. Okay, I've spent the last month on scaffolding. Okay, I've got a project going on in my shed, and so I've put in a ceiling in my shed, and so I've been on scaffolding for the last month. In the old days, I would put one plank on the scaffolding. I have 3 now. In the old days, I'd just shinny right up the scaffolding. Now I have a ladder to walk up the ladder to step onto the scaffolding. Why? Because I know that when I fall, I'm not going to bounce back as quickly as I can. So I have a little bit more of a fear, a little more respect for it now. But there's people who, they're so scared of the idea of getting this. And so therefore their idea is put in. Then you have the other group where for whatever reason, okay, they're like, bring it on. You're seeing this, by the way, with college kids who are going back, okay, who honestly, they're just not being the brightest. Maybe that's why they need to be in college, but, they're making some really bad choices on, I read about a bunch of kids that ended up getting COVID because they had a beer pong party. You know what? In this environment, Darwin's right. We just need to kind of breed the thing out. I mean, that's just crazy if you're going to do silly stuff like that. And there's people who are like, well, it's a government conspiracy. Everybody's against us. There's people, it's not real. It's all made up. You have other people who, I tend to fall in this category. I love statistics and data anyway, so I just pour in the data, and try to make decisions based on that. You have people all over the spectrum on this thing, okay? So you say, how do you balance that out? I mean, how do you come out? Here's what I would say. I don't care where you are in the spectrum. Mask, no mask. Stay at home, go out to eat, don't go out to eat. Go to ball games, don't go to ball game. In school with mask, in school without mask, no school. Everybody's all over the place on this thing. Okay, here's what I would say. As a Christian, if you are driven and making your choices based on fear, there's a problem. Because we're to be driven and motivated by love. You say, and are you saying that we should just throw everything to the wind? No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that if you are living in a state of fear, there's a spiritual issue at play here. Because God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, of love, and of a sound mind. Love is, I think, a big key. In that your love or your passion, I deal with this in public speaking all the time. When I'm trying to get, one of the greatest fears of people is public speaking. One of the ways that you get people to get past the public speaking is you get them to be passionate enough about what they say and love the importance of getting their message across that they stop thinking about what people are thinking about themselves. It's the same way in this thing. When you're driven by love instead of fear, then you make a wise decision based on love rather than fear. I've tried to come up with a way to illustrate this, and so some of you are going to really have a hard time with this illustration, and some of you are going to be okay with it. But as a pastor, I'm in a very unique situation often when I'm trying to minister to somebody. Years ago, we had, we still have it, the MRSA thing. And if you've ever been around people with MRSA, what happens is, when I go to visit them in a hospital, there's a door, and it says precautions, and there's a whole little stand there with a gown, gloves, masks, everything. And often they'll be on that door, precautions. And the thing is, you are kind of protecting them from you, but more you're protecting you from them, okay? That's more what the focus is. It's the idea of they don't want you to get this and give this and spread this around, and it's highly contagious, and it's a kind of a common thing, particularly with older people. And I'm going in to provide comfort. That's my job. And how comforting do you think it is when I walk in looking like I'm at a biohazard movie? Hi, I'm here to comfort you. Hey, don't touch me, I have a decision to make. If it's a situation where I know that person is comfortable with that and they've been exposed to it, and every family member that's been in their room for the last 2 weeks has been all gowned up and stuff like that, then I might gown up. There's other times that I walk in the room as I am, sit down next to their bed, encourage them a little bit, grab their hand, have a word of prayer, and walk out of the room. Why? Because my love and commitment to try to minister to them overtakes the fear of what's going to happen to me. Now, when I walk out of the room, I'll be honest. I hit every hand sanitizer there is on the way out of the hospital. No problem, I've done it for years. There's some situations I'll walk in. I let love be the determination for how I'm going to respond. I let that drive me. Not the fear of what if. That's the closest illustration I can have for you to help you understand this. And I think what happens is sometimes we become so focused on the fear that we forget. It's about, and I have I tell you what, I am greatly concerned for our kids right now. When we are producing a generation of kids where we're teaching them from the day they step into school, be afraid of everything and everyone. I don't know the social implications of that 5-10 years from now. And that's a tough balance for parents to have. And keeping children safe versus the other thing of getting a kid to the point that they're scared and paranoid of seeing a friend or touching a friend or saying hi to a friend or being in school. And the implication, you're going, well, Pastor, it's just going to be for a little while. I pray that is true. But I doubt that is true. Just because of the direction the country doesn't go better, And so that's my concern. So I want to challenge you with this idea that when we talk about these 10 Commandments, their preference, the bookends to both of them, all of them, is this idea of love. And if we're not careful and we live too much in fear, we drive out love. Think about this for a second. Think of the implications for sharing the gospel with people. If you were taught 6 feet away, if you completely emphasize the idea of I am a danger to you, how do we reach people? How do you encourage people? So what happens is we have a whole bunch of people who are isolated and alone and are scared, and you're watching suicide rates go up. You're watching depression rates go up. You're watching the issue of abuse, physical abuse in the home, emotional abuse, drug abuse, alcohol abuse. Why? Because we're keeping everybody, we're not letting anybody get close. Why? Because we're afraid. But when I love people, I'm not saying, next time you're standing in line at Lowe's, go up and hug somebody. Not what I'm saying, okay? I'm not saying that, but I'm saying we've got to be on guard here, because let me tell you something. Satan is smart. And if you think he's not at work, you've got your head buried in the sand. If you think that there's not a spiritual dynamic to what is happening in here, you've got your head in the sand. There's a spiritual element of what's going on. And we've got to be wise enough to say, let's figure out a balance between loving people and fearing people. And that's going to be a tough negotiation for any church, much less ours. But we are commanded to love. And it's very difficult. You go, well, we can love at a distance. I would like to tell you yes, but I've not seen it work effectively. Because one of the first rules of ministry is you can't minister to people at a distance. It's got to be up close and personal. And you think about it for a minute. The people who have helped you in the last whatever many years of your life have not been people that have been distant. They've been people who are close, people who are involved in your life, people who you're talking to on a regular basis. We've got to get to that point. So, as I wrap this up, this idea of love, here's what I would say. So first of all, let me talk about the person who's scared to die. You should be scared. The Bible is very clear on what happens to a person who dies without Jesus Christ. And there's nothing pretty about it. And what I would say to you is this. God was very clear. God so loved the world that he came to this earth to die for you, to pay for your sin, and to offer you a gift of salvation. And if you have never put your faith and trust in him, you need to understand the solution to that fear is a faith and trust in Jesus Christ. Because God loved you and gave his life for you. And when you understand that, there is no fear in death anymore. And the bottom line is this. I can get in my car, I can get on my bike, I can get in an accident, I can die, and I can stand before God and be into his presence at that moment. So, well, if you get COVID, you could die. Yes, I could. And I'll be with Jesus, and I win, you lose, because you're still here. You go, well, won't you miss people? Yes, I'll miss people. But you know what? Most of the people in my life have a relationship with Jesus Christ, so it's not a goodbye. I'm going to see him again. It's just a matter of time. And I'm okay with that. You know, I can't believe you have such a nonchalant idea about that. It's not a nonchalant. It's the idea of I know what's beyond the grave, so I don't have to fear it. I know that I have a God who loves me, who gave himself for me, who died on the cross for me, who offered me salvation, who I asked into my heart, and he's my Savior. I'm not afraid if I take my last breath today. I'm okay with that. And you and I have that message that we can share with the world. And some of them really need to hear it. A second aspect is, how do we as a church respond? Look, you've always heard me say this. Anybody who walks through that door, we love them. Period. I don't care. I don't care their background. I don't care, anything. We love them as Christ loved us. Period. Why? Because we love because he first loved us. That's why. You go, well, there's some people that then you got a problem. You got a problem. Seriously. And you got to get over it. And you go, well, Pastor, you don't understand. There's just some people that, do you know what political party they're from? Don't care. Don't care. Do you know what they really believe? Do you really know what their lifestyle is? Don't care. don't care. You know why? Because God didn't care for me. God took me as I was and changed me and is changing me into what he wants me to be. And he'll do the same thing for them. He'll do the same thing for them. You go, well, it's just so hard. I'm afraid that if I open that door, then I'll be accepting of them, and then I have to put a rubber stamp on everything that they're doing. And Rick Warren said it best. I come back to this so many times because I think this is brilliant what he said. Okay, you guys do it. Yeah, there we go. Our culture has accepted two huge lies. The first is that if you disagree with someone's lifestyle, you must fear or hate them. By the way, there's a lot of hate politics going on right now. On all sides of it. Don't be a part of it. Not as a child of God. The second is that to love someone means you have to agree with everything they believe or do. Both are nonsense. You don't have to compromise your convictions to be compassionate. You don't. You want a great example? I think marriage is the best example for me. Okay? I do not have to agree with my wife. And I don't. But I still love her. And I will always love her even when she is dead wrong. Has nothing to do with my love for her. It's just the idea if she is stubborn enough to want to be wrong, I'm going to let her do it. I mean, that's where we are. So you know what? You can come in here. I don't care what your belief system. I don't care what you want to believe. It doesn't matter. I can look at you and say, you are dead wrong, but I still love you. Because I do it with my wife all the time. One day she's going to wake up and realize I was right. But until that day, I'm just going to keep loving her. I mean, really, we got to get this across. And we're at a point right now where somebody goes out there and puts something on Facebook, and we're in some big war of words. If you haven't figured this out, look, your little post on Facebook is not going to change their world. Because 800 other people have posted it too. Just love them. Love them. And this is so important for us to understand because I'm afraid what's happening is we will slide into this fear thing and we'll start allowing fear to drive our lives instead of love. And the next thing you know, we're afraid of everybody and everything, and everybody is at a distance. And then we're going to go out and try to reach people or share with people or encourage people or help people. But we can't because everybody's so far away from us. And it's dangerous. And for our children, listen, we're not careful. We're going to raise a whole group of children who feel alone and isolated. And you take a little child and you put them into adolescence when they feel alone and isolated, you have a recipe for disaster. Because they will grab a person that wants to get close and show them love and attention and affection, regardless of whether or not it's a healthy relationship. And I'm telling you, if we're not careful here, and so we've got to find that balance. Because like I said, God puts it as bookends. You love God, He will be your authority. You'll put your faith and trust in Him. He will be your priority. He'll be the center of all that you do. You love Him like you're supposed to love Him. Anytime something brings His name down, that will bother you. And you'll take one day a week, and say, I'm going to focus on my spiritual, mental, emotional, physical well-being and worship God this day. And when you start loving other people, you'll honor and value and be generous. Speak truth. Love like you're supposed to love. And you'll be content. Don't be looking at their stuff trying to figure out how you can get it. Be content with what God has provided for you, and you will try to minister to those people God puts in your path. So I end us with this challenge and with this idea. God establishes these 10 words or ideas as a foundation for how we live in this world. Jesus explains it in two simple ideas. Love God, love people. Our challenge is to love as Jesus loved and to show the world a fearless life sourced in love. Show that love to a lost world who's walking in fear this week. Let's pray. Lord, help us. Lord, it's easy to jump back and forth into the whims of the culture. But Lord, you have challenged us to not be conformed in the thinking of this world and the way that this world functions. So Lord, help us to know what is wisdom, what is right. Help us to know the best way, Lord, to get close to people in spite of all of the things we have going against us. Lord, may we walk in love this week. May we love those that you bring into our path. May you help us to minister to courage, to uphold one another. And Lord, may you use us to help a world who is living in fear and constantly, Lord, driven by fear of death, fear of isolation, fear of things that Lord, will hurt them. So, Lord, use us. Help us to be a light. Help us to encourage us. Lord, don't let us, help us to keep a balance on this thing, not get to one extreme or the other. And when it is all said and done, Lord, may people come to you as a result of the way we live our lives for you. These things we ask in your name. Amen. Let's stand together and we're going to sing, I Will Serve Thee.